Slop Kings, the return. Today's episode, we set sail with the authenticity anchor points and cultural entropy. Tentative title. Joining me as first mate or co-captain of this dingy barge,
Gabe Sinclair, your favorite anti-slop shoveler.
and a vast shovel. What is it? Toss the slop buckets. Whatever they do with the boat with it, the bilge pump. Turn the bilge to pump out the slop. Grind it, swabby. Because, yeah, we're going to talk about anchor points, sort of as a concept. Something I've been talking about. I'm writing an essay about it. I thought I wanted to run it by Gabe and get his input and thoughts on my pitch here. So, on Slop Kings, we try to cover the mechanics of growth in the modern world in terms of like people that make art, cultural products, and such. And so I thought this would be a interesting angle, and also it's grounded. I have it grounded in a target, because normally we have a target who is the embodiment of this trend, right? So we had Todd Howard, famously, Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, technically Sanderson comes first. Yeah, look at Todd stealing credit. Slop Kings was a Sanderson creation, damn it.
Yeah, Todd Howard awarded for creating Slop Kings. I'm joking because Todd Howard just won an award for it was listed as the creator of Fallout and Elder Scrolls, which for anyone that actually knows those properties knows he came in like 3 games into Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Actually, funny enough, he was involved in he's a third game champ.
Yeah, and fun fact, by the way, we can actually blame GAE. We can blame the big gay and the civil rights regime, because the reason why he actually submitted his application. The day he submitted his application, I just go visit the Bethesda Game Studios. He got a day off due to Martin Luther King Day, actually.
Mm-hmm. Libs win again. But we won't be sidetracked to Todd Howard and Tim Kaine and the eternal struggle. I think people get enough of that, and you can always get more of it on our much underappreciated Arcanum series, the Kaine Corner. But
yeah, Slop Kings, we just give it to you slop fiends for the plebs. Like the Kaine Corner is for people we actually respect.
Yeah, the people that get it. But we have a new king entering the field today, Peter Jackson, director of Lord of the Rings, and more recently, relevant to this topic, the Hobbit movies, plural. Have you seen these films, Gabe?
Yes, I did, and I just remember the good parts of the first one, and that's it.
Yeah, I saw the first one in theaters, and I almost walked out. I was with my roommate and girlfriend, and we were all Hobbit heads going in, and we're like, oh my god, how long is this thing? And they're gonna make 2 more. How are they gonna? So I've never seen the second 2.
I hear the fan cut is good. The extended fan cuts to turn it basically to the closest to the original source material as possible. I hear the fan cut's decent.
Oh, I bet that would. So they just slice all 3 into like a single 2.5-hour movie or something,
and cut out all the Legolas shit, all the they added so much. Yeah, they added a random dwarf elf romance for some reason, I think.
Yeah, which was very not hot for anyone. I don't think anyone ever has asked for a dwarf man and an elf woman to like get it on or be forced to fantasize or consider that in their mind. No offense to our short kings out there. Yeah. Love you guys. It's been on my
Robert
mind.
Crumb of dwarves.
Yeah, I just finished reading The Hobbit to my kids, and they were nuts about it. They loved it so much. And I also just watched the 1970 film. Did you ever see that, the animated 1970 film?
Bits and pieces.
Yeah. Okay. It's really, I find it very charming. It takes some liberties in terms of moving the plot along faster, but want to show the movie to someone. I haven't mentioned the live action to my kids, and I never intend to. I'll have to figure that out on their own. But it's just it's not even an hour and a half long. It's an hour 16 minutes, I want to say. It was made for TV, so normally people would watch it with commercial breaks. So it'd be a 2-hour thing, I assume.
Well, yeah. Well, the book itself is very ABC driven. It's It's a very cozy read. It's a very cozy, simple read.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it got adventure. It's got Bilbo growing and becoming the classic kind of hero's journey. And then he literally comes home a hero and with all this wealth and reward. But my topic of the concept of the authenticity anchor. So two arguments I want to make to you, Gabe, today. The first being that authenticity anchors exist and are even a real thing. There's a concept there. And second, that I think as a culture, due to like technological reasons and maybe other reasons, we are less in contact with anchor points, with the kind of cultural products. And a lot of these are secondary world fictions that I have in mind when I'm talking about this stuff. So let me workshop this with you. What is an authenticity anchor point? Basically, it's the point of highest fidelity to the creating artist's vision. Sort of the platonic form of the artistic product. So with The Hobbit, I would argue that obviously it's a book because the book came first. But in addition to just coming first, my argument is I have a few things I think make a piece of art more authentic. At least authentic is the term I'm using for this. Let me know if this makes sense. So I think how direct vision of the creating artist is transmuted comes across from the form itself. And so with writing, it's literally the thoughts of the person writing. You're reading thoughts. Thoughts are going on the page. They're going right into your mind. Has the ability to move through time and actually linger on concepts. Whereas you go farther away from that as you switch to a video, because you have additional aspects of creation. Right? It's not just the thoughts being transferred or being described. It's additionally like visual aspects that are maybe not necessary to the message or the artistic form. Like you have to include the sun, where the sun is, like what time of day it is. You have to include backdrops and things like that.
Or
There's just
Tom Bombadil.
additional literal clutter. Okay, I don't think Tom Bombadil would apply to this, but well, yeah,
What?
well, no, maybe it does
Because he was cut. He was cut from the movies famously.
for length. Yeah. Okay, I'm
And
stealing that. Yeah, Tom Bombadil is a
and,
perfect
and
example.
the thing is, he's very part of the spirit of the book, of the spirit of the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's overall kind of cosmology, and his kind of love for folklore and folkish kind of myth. Like Tom Bombadil is in the books is actually quite important.
Yeah, he's kind of the story, not the story miniature, but yeah, you're right. He's like Bilbo's own power, or sorry, Frodo's own power. Looking back at him, right? Because Frodo, the only thing that keeps him alive is that he has a little bit of the same characteristic of not caring about the ring, but not to the same level as Bombadil, who literally like would just drop it in a ditch somewhere and lose interest because he's just so free of that.
He's just too bloom pilled.
And then lower down on this, order of authenticity of direct connection in form to the author's intent and mind. It goes down from books to video. Then below that, I would say is meme and or post. Because if you're in a social media environment, your post has to be a certain length, typically to get good engagement, or a certain format, or have it be image based. And so if you're basing off images like building blocks, memes as building blocks, your ability to project in artistic form as your own image is challenged by that. So that would be the first aspect. Then additionally, these anchor points are things where there's a singular voice with larger teams, with films, video games, all these or TV shows. Over time, these have all had sort of bloating budgets, bloating expectations for quality. I think that also diminishes the ability of a single voice. And actually, shout out friend of the show, Tim Kaine has a video on this. Just pull him in again. Just talking about how it's very difficult, and I've seen this as well. Like when you're on a larger team, just for everyone, as people come and go from it, just to even be aware of what you're doing there, because it's often hard to communicate that, especially with an unfinished product. And then the other idea is serialization, just as you go on in time from a starting point. Let's say The Hobbit, written whenever that was written, like 65 or whatever, probably earlier.
Well, it was first a story he told to his kid, if I recall correctly. And his drawings, he did the artwork too, if I recall correctly.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Oh, it was written in the 30s, dude. The Hobbit was written. Oh yeah, because no, because I remember there's a famous story of him being anti-Nazi because the Nazis wanted a German translation of the Lord of the Rings, and the stuck-up Anglo that is J.R.R. Tolkien. But Franco's top guy said no. It was as a respectable third wave positionist. He said no. So the entire Hobbit plus the trilogy were released before 1945.
Okay, the authenticity anchor point also has to occur before corporate enshittification. So that's sort of a later thing where once the product is established and then it's sort of seen as a money making thing, the product gets bought by corporation, acquired by corporation, like Star Wars being the sort of perfect example of that, and just sort of milk the built-in customer trust and loyalty. I recently heard a friend of the show, Cairo Smith, describe enshittification this way, which I think is the tightest summary of it. So, I mean, does that make sense? Are books and all these things and movies and all that, all these sort of settings and series, that there's like points that are more authentic? It's not necessarily even the first entry in a series, but that there's versions of it that are more authentic than the later versions.
Yeah, it's
these
it's
reasons.
molded to a point where it acquires its own unique shape that dignifies it as its own distinct thing. That whatever it culminates to, it is that thing that in question. Because
Yeah.
there's between building up something and then to form a very particular shape versus spreading it around to like to quote Bilbo, like butter over too much bread. I think is the Hobbit line.
Oh yeah. Good Hobbit lore working in. Yeah, exactly. It gets spread out over time or creative minds, and it does lose. It like loses that potency. But I think the reason I'm proposing this idea is that as a culture, we're post literate in a way, right? Like people generally don't read as many books, and the books people read are all more limited to their sub niche, right? People are reading lit RPG, aren't reading the classics. People reading the classics are sort of stuck in that bog for the most part. People reading romantasy, they're in their own thing, and so there isn't this broad cultural book products that can serve as anchor points for shared series that people are interested, like Star Trek. Like Star Trek is another one. It might be a good example of a series that maybe didn't peak in this first iteration, right? It had some interesting ideas, but it almost grew in its like fan fiction culture post the first series, and then with next generation, I think most people consider that to be, if not the high watermark or the best of all the series. Is like they they really embodied its core there, and
Well, that's when the slot merchants came in. Everyone else, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, are the best two Star Trek series.
they came after, right? I know you were not alive for any of this game.
Well, yeah, well, I was actually no, I wasn't alive for. Unless was it Voyager to early 2000s?
I think so. To be honest, I didn't watch any of that shit when it came out. I would have been really little for
You're a
this,
true
but
trekker, not a real trekker.
yeah, I got into it later, more out of curiosity.
Well, that's interesting in terms of fan bases because Star Wars had the exact opposite of it. The more the fans got involved in it, the more it was tarnished. While the fans of Star Trek tend to be kind of truer to the vision of Gene Roddenberry, like the respect and reverence for Gene Roddenberry is supposed to be fervent and strong with the Trekkies, from my outside observation for the most part. In contrast with Lucas, where it's like, oh, he's just a dumb idiot, or he acts, oh, he doesn't know his own series. Like, it's a common epitaph amongst Star Wars fans. Like, I know Star Wars better than George Lucas does. It's a very common like mind
Yeah,
space they have it.
I feel it. I feel it myself, actually. I think most people that see the prequels, have that healthy, normal reaction. Would
I'm
you agree,
sorry,
Gabe?
but in terms of actual authenticity anchors, the prequels are extremely filled with authenticity anchors.
How so?
It's pure Lucas. It's pure. It's take. I'll give you a two-pronged example of this. Let's take something shitty, Last Jedi, or the all the new Disney films, and let's take it with Andor, which is universally seen as good. And from my understanding from respected associates, apparently Andor is good. But these are two different things. They both deviate extravagantly so to the point where Star Trek just becomes a theme. Like Lucas is becoming Lovecraft, where everyone just takes bits and pieces and throws in his shit into their own little OC do not steal like worldview. Like Andor is just pure politicking. It's revolution porn. It's partisan porn. It's about revolutions and how it's the cycles of history and cycles of power and politicking. It's just set in a fantastical world. You could take Star Wars out of it and it'll probably make the story even stronger, right?
Mhm.
It's good for what it is. If you like the politics and you like real politics and so forth, it's good. But the Star Wars skin is just he has his idea and he plops in the Russian Revolution and revolutions as a whole into the Star Wars universe and see what ticks, see what makes it tick. Versus the Star Wars as costume, as like a very like instead of an actual outfit of identity, it's a costume idea. It's a not even pornographic. It's just more juvenile. It's
Mhm.
a mere plaything, which is the J.J. Abrams Star Wars. Both of these things divert radically from the OG Star Wars trilogy, and also from the OG Star Wars prequels because the original Star Wars series is just it's a fantasy. It's space opera, right? It's a classical, fantastical series of films, and versus the prequels, yes, there's politics in it, but it takes much more of an operatic view. If you watch all six as a trilogy or as a I don't know what a court. There's more than what's
Was it
quartet? A sextet?
sextet?
A sextet. As if you watch all as a sextet, it's an operatic. It's a cyclical. It's a grand opera. He goes for the grand opera. Everyone, I mean, even you have to admit the prequels' musical motifs are excellent. Duel of the Fates,
Yeah, yeah. No, the music is absolutely good.
right? Because he doesn't take an actual literist view. Like Andor takes a very literist, political. This is how the politics of Star Wars actually work. Well, Lucas takes much more of a symbolic, grander. This is like a view of cyclical. This is a grand spiritual view of cycles. When Republic falls, it's not due to tax policies. It's not due to intrinsic like partisan pieces of a particular space policy. It's based on an operatic view of how civilizations grow and fall. He takes much more of a mystical, dare I say, Evolian view of the universe, rather than a mere realpolitik, mere zoological view of politics, the way the modern people who watch Star Wars do.
Yeah, but I think the difference is probably that Star Trek was more it states its values more clearly. It's almost more literary, like classic original Star Trek. And like towards this idea of authenticity, those episodes where they have like what's his name? Not Picard, the other guy,
Kirk,
Kirk.
Kirk,
They have they have Kirk and another lawyer, and they literally are talking about like the value of of tangible written word books versus like the value of digital books, and like they're actually talking about the values of that, and they're stating making value judgments, debating clearly in this sort of like Socratic dialogue of like what is good in the world, like what is a book, what and then compare that to Star Wars, and the original Star Wars has a huge visual clarity and that's made very clear and there is this and there's the bombastic language of like good and evil, but it doesn't have that literary quality, right? And I think that's why it's subject to degradation. Not that obviously modern Star Trek is dog shit too, but in terms of like as a starting anchor point, and that's why I think Star Wars people, everyone thinks like, oh, I could do Star Wars better. I think it's because Star Wars was made so broad at the start, and I think yes, the prequels are genuinely Lucas. Like I hear you and agree with you there, but it's also not as genuinely Star Wars. Uh,
Ooh, it sounds like you want to throw out that anchor of the slop, man. As your ship captain, I'm seeing you throw away that anchor.
which anchor?
The anchor of the prequels.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, they're an anchor. They're a dead weight.
You have to rewatch them. You honestly have to rewatch. You have to watch all six as a piece.
I I can't have my mind just. And this is a whole other thing. I mean, I didn't plan to make this a Star Wars thing. But I was gonna really want to focus on the Hobbit. But since
You
you brought
brought
it
up
up,
Star Wars. You brought up. You said I might Hobbit and also maybe Star Wars. You brought this upon
yeah,
yourself.
it's relevant. It's relevant. But the prequels, yeah, I'm sorry, they're dog shit. And I see the Zoomer copes.
I'll say it to your point. While Star Trek is much more didactic or logos driven, is Star Wars is much more totem driven, much more visual representation. If you look at the two scenes in Star Wars, Darth Vader versus Luke in Empire Strikes Back, iconic, and Anakin versus Obi-Wan. You take those two images side by side of all their context, and just from a purely visual medium, those two fights say so much, almost equal to like 20 episodes worth of Star Trek theory selling, just with the emotional impact based on a visual medium. Because you can make Star Trek into a book very easily. You cannot you cannot convey the emotional weight and depth of those two fight scenes via narrative, via written form. I don't think you can. The visuals of both those two fight scenes, the Anakin versus Obi Wan and Darth Vader versus Luke, the cinematography, the visuals, the music, every part of that visual stimulation that you get embodied into that experience. You cannot convey that in a written format, unlike Star Trek, which I think you can for the most part. There's no iconic imagery in Star Trek, or at least there's iconic imagery, but there's no image that forces you to possess the image. It doesn't possess you the way those two images do.
Anakin versus Obi-Wan. I I don't think that's iconic at all. That fight.
Oh,
That
come
is,
on,
yes.
really?
I know you saw it when you were 4 years old, and so you're like, wow,
Realistic. It's
this
one of
should
the few
eat,
times the
bro.
dialogue is good. The music is good. There's emotional weight. Have you?
In my view, the Jedi are evil. So 10 out of 10, George. You did it again.
Yes, you're being a word salad. It's not about the exact words, it's about what he's trying to convey. It's the inner meaning of what he's trying to say. Right in that scene of Anakin, he is you turned her against me. His tears are rolling up in his eyes. It's a fight between he is a chosen one, but he's because he's been led astray. You could see it when you're flowing on the platforms on this literally hell. They're fighting in hell. The area, the landscape represents Anakin's inner world, his inner being, as he's trying to fight out of his way out of hell. He feels like he's in hell. He is in hell, right? And Obi Wan's trying to literally. What do you mean? What do you think he says when he says, "I have the high ground"? Right? While Anakin's literally boiling in the lavas of hell, literally. He has no legs to stand on at the end of it. He loses the argument. Obi-Wan is literally always above him. He starts the fight above him. You know, when Obi-Wan hits that power pose on the spaceship ramp, and he ends above him. He's an angelic figure of the light trying to save him. He knows he's failed Anakin. He even says, Anakin, I have failed you. I have failed you, and I'm sorry. He says you were the chosen one, and he was cast down into hell. Anakin's a very Luciferian figure into this, and yet again, the scenery, the music communicates far more than the quote unquote cringy dialogue. You're taking it from a purity theory cell to you're way too logocentric. You're taking a dare I say Talmudic view, way too word oriented, rather than the actual actions of the world piece as a whole.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's not any thought put into it, or it's not, well choreographed. It's, well choreographed fight scene, but just everything leading up to that, the justification for why they're there, like why is he even? Again, I do not want to turn this into just a prequel pro versus con. I just think you and the Zoomers that want to defend that, I will happily do like a watch through with you got someone like on of that whole scene or that whole movie, whatever it takes, and just tell you how Red Letter Media did nothing wrong. Every point they made got them dead to rights on how shitty those prequel movies were. There's some like okay stuff in there. I'm not saying it was all garbage, but it's it's kind of like it reminds me of I was talking to somebody about what shot was it? Chickenpox. Like I knew somebody who's like, oh, you got to get the shots. That's the kids don't get it because it's so terrible. I was like, I and everyone I knew had chickenpox, and it was no big deal, bro. As long as you're not a vitamin deficient, starving child in Angola, it's completely normal and healthy to get it. But like it's like, oh wait, you grew up after this date, so like you just don't know. But it's like that's the power of growing up under a system and not knowing any better or any differently. You grew up with prequels, and that was classic Star Wars, which had all this branding power. And they have Goo Goo Gaga Jar Jar Binks. I'm sure you love that. I'm sure
But
that's
here,
very
no,
it's very
here's the thing. I
singularity.
didn't watch. I didn't watch. I watched the first two prequels on a Discord call. I was like 18 plus when I watched the
What
prequels.
the fuck?
Yes,
Really?
you've loaned your ability. The thing is, you're making the same guy who tried to go, actually to study say that the vaccine. You're just doing that, except with the media experts, media literacy. You're doing basically the millennial version of media literacy right now, by offshoring your thinking capabilities, your feeling capabilities to red letter media.
No. I can explain everything wrong with the prequels if you want to just do a prequels thing.
Well, there. I'm not saying there is nothing wrong, quote unquote, wrongness, but you're just, yeah, again, there's a sense of logocentrism. Oh, due to these critiques, the
Mhm.
prequels are supposed to be experienced.
Well,
They're
everything is supposed to be experienced. So is JJ Juju Abrams films. They're so experiential. Like the scene where the whole planet out to be like a Death Star. I cried because it was so moving to me that like why they're so powerful.
what
How are the good guys? Could they ever do anything? And then
they're
Finn was cut across the back, just like Jesus was lashed in the back, and the symbolism and the richness, and it was like, wow. I mean, you can't. How could you speak against visuals like that?
there's a difference between the mild erotic sensation of being like caressed by a damn hooker
Uh,
versus the loving engulfing of a proper au pair.
mm,
There's a tactile difference. Yes, they both stimulate the nerves, but the forms of which that you're experiencing the contact are completely different.
mhm.
And like, but we'll settle this later with the prequel debate. All right,
Okay, show me the prequels.
we're doing the prequel debate. Um, but to your point of cultural anchoring, I think there is to say at the cultural anchoring point, all six of those films are distinctly culture anchor. And in terms of the OG, let's say the big three, as well the big three of Star Trek One, the original series, Star Trek Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine, they both distinctly are set within this militaristic, or at least the idea of like a militaristic camaraderie. You know, Gene Roddenberry was a Navy man, if I recall correctly. He was trying to put that into a sci-fi context that had a very deep, hopeful bloomer view of the future, and compared it with like STD and J.J. Abrams. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They
I,
have nothing in common with the actual culturally anchoring points of those original three series.
actually, I wait. The of Star Trek, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I no. Okay. Well, I think I disagree there. I think all of the Star Treks have a very strong tie to the very first one as an anchor point, and to somewhat next gen, because he was still alive then, had some influence. I suppose he was a dick, and he like kind of fucked up all the worst parts of the first season. Are Gene Roddenberry just being like an over functioning weirdo. Um, he was too old to molest the women on set, so he had to get the energy out somehow. So he just made everyone's life hell. The '60s, they let you do it. But actually, I want to kneel to the Zoomers and offer an olive branch. I think you have persuaded me in terms of anchor points for prequels, though, because I think the clash is they're so different from the original, and so it's a huge tonal clash. But within the prequels, there is a very consistent voice, and you've seen that carried on. I know there's like the whole Clone Wars and other shows and media properties made on those, and it is an authentic cultural touchstone. It's just a very different flavor, but it is like it's uniquely Lucas and him being a weirdo, in the same way that Roddenberry's Navy professional environment from the first one, even if they try to get a little weird, right? I know was a Deep Space Nine tries to mix up with a slightly darker setting or flavor of the setting. It never escapes that taste, at least of any of the things people consider good, right? Like I know there's the Picard series that's considered shit, which actually does throw all this stuff out the window. I only know that about that thanks to Red Letter Media as well. Yes, that's where I get all my information on film.
Red
Um,
letter media literacy. You have letter media literacy syndrome.
based. Yeah, that's it. I'm viewing it with a new respect actually through this authenticity lens for my prequel brothers.
No other The thing is, there's no difference between Jar Jar as a character and Grogu, the Baby Yoda from Mandalorian, except because it's a comedic side relief character, but one is cute and marketable, and one is ugly, and that's the joke,
Mhm.
right? Only an auteur would make Jar Jar Binks. It's a glorious mistake. It's the Russian invasion. Lucas is Napoleon. Jar Jar Binks is the Russian invasion, right? It's the mistake that ruined his legacy. But the under the embers, there's still this material spark lives on underneath the embers.
Mhm.
In contrast with the mere, parody of its power, which is Grogu or the Baby Yoda phenomenon,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is a mere repetition. Or it's the same thing with the Lord of the Rings series. You got The Hobbit, and well, you got Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy of films, which were good. They're actually one of the best trilogies ever made. I still
Mhm.
think Peter Jackson's films are excellent as films. They're masterpieces. I'd say so.
The original Lord of the Rings. Oh yeah, like unquestionably.
But then a Hobbit, and then they mutate a little bit more, and then finally you got generic fantasy, like dark fantasy slop, which is the Amazon series.
Oh, I didn't even think about that as a extension of the Hobbit verse in a way, but it kind of is. And yeah, I don't have any criticism of Peter Jackson. Honestly, I wouldn't consider a slop king in general. Just the that specific movie series, the way they broke out the Hobbit, I think it seems like that was also a corporate move, like going towards the enshittification aspect. I don't think because he Peter Jackson even canceled or stopped being the director like two or three times to try to get someone else to do it, and then somehow it kept coming back. And then I think maybe just out of an interest in maintaining the legacy of the brand because his name's so associated with it. He's like,
It's
okay,
this
I guess I'll just
albatross around his particular neck.
yeah. He's like, I'll just fucking do it. That's my impression at least.
But in terms of we'll expand a little bit more of your of this because because we're just talking about slopification at this point. Like, what's strong examples of cultural anchor points for you, or artistic anchor points?
Yeah. The most obvious example really is like The Hobbit, or many other examples you could think of. People making books within the series, or video games, or movies, and just the way that transforms the way the property is seen. But then also, yeah, I think that probably is really the core of it. Like the way that our society doesn't, with less people reading overall and reading books in particular, uh, we lose out on having those anchor points for series, right? Like there's not less people are familiar with like the core starting material. Like Lord of the Rings, one of the reasons that that's so good probably is that people just had like a cultural awareness of this stuff already from of this secondary world from Tolkien, from the books, from the Silmarillion. A lot of people did read that and they were already like so aware of this like artistic vision and like so many details of it. There's a reason it's a meme to say, did you know Tolkien hated X? You know,
He
people
hated
can't.
allegory.
Yeah, yeah, he did. Tolkien hated allegory. Tolkien. I saw a ridiculous one recently that was like Tolkien hated Dune. No, no, no. That was one we saw a while ago. Tolkien hated Dune was a huge one. But there's another one that was like Tolkien hated like Iraq or some shit. It was just like, what the fuck? You really people are just desperate.
Truk.
Those Tolkien troops. um, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say in regards to because think about it, we're talking about here is something that's central. Do I dare usher his name for the upteenth episode with us before you smack me? Spangler does indeed talk about this. In terms when a civilization is a polis as in like a central point, which is a city.
Mhm.
And in terms of applies to literature, Lord of the Rings is specifically a Anglo man's interpretation of ancient Anglo myth and mythology. He read Beowulf. He read all these. He says he wanted to give the Englishmen their own Beowulf, if I recall correctly, or something along these lines. These beautiful Nordic mythologies, the Nordic sagas, and so forth. He was obsessed with the sagas. Half of the dwarf names are from old sagas from Nordic. All the dwarf names are from dwarf names from sagas, if I recall correctly. I think Oakenshield, for example, is just straight up ripped from one of the old sagas.
Mhm.
So it's for one Englishman who has the love of merry old England. That's what the Shire is. He is a hobbit for all intents and purposes, and he was a man obsessed with English folklore. And you could see this very strongly in both The Hobbit. There's a lot of England in Hobbit, in The Hobbit. When you read The Hobbit, you get more of medieval England than visiting modern day London and the UK as it is today, as a
Right.
cultural expression of a people.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And contrast that with just to finish off real quick, what I think what you're saying is, again, it goes from a story. A story is it's a set thing. A story is beginning, middle, and end. A story is a tale from a one person, from their perspective and their cultural nomos, from their place of being at that one particular time. What you're saying is when a story evolves or devolves, when you throw out the anchor, because what is an anchor? An anchor settles you into one location. It centers you. It grounds you into a certain location. When you throw away the anchor, you become nebulous. You basically whisk away in the vapors for all intents and purposes. You become vaporous. It's the devolution from a story to a setting. Lord of
Well,
the Rings is now a setting.
no, no. I think that was actually my next point, was that transition from story to setting with the intense genreification of fiction as well. That is exactly that's the embodiment of that, right? The fantasy is Tolkien, right? Like fantasy as a genre often is like described as being people recreating lesser versions of Tolkien. Um, and I actually I have a whole side tangent on that with like the recent Orc City drama, if you remember that. Uh,
The Orcus, what was it called? They very orcuously slaughtered the Orcus people of Orc City or something. It was something.
yeah,
Like, it's not that bad, but almost that bad.
yeah, by a friend of the show, John A. Douglas, I believe. Seems like a very nice guy, but he got blown up with all his, intro line to his book was like he orked orkily down the street.
Across the Orc City.
Yeah, which is it's so setting mount. It is it's like a pastiche, right? And but there's a hint of irony or humor, and that's very often the case there. And that I think is part of the reason that a lot of these settings is ultimately what we're talking about. Things that lack authenticity is lack of verisimilitude, which our friend J.R.R. Tolkien had some good quotes about the creative of an abortive secondary world. You know, Tolkien was a strong believer of this sort of internal consistency in the world. Obviously, he was autistically obsessed with like every little detail of a setting. In a way, he seemed like a very well balanced individual. I think he had took great pleasure in just sort of building a setting out and then writing out the events of it. Um, but the comparison I want to make is between Orc City and Goblin Town, because Goblin Town is actually the name of where of like the goblin's little base in the mountain. It's referred to as Goblin Town, um, which I thought was an interesting contrast. I'd forgotten. People use the term now, like going down to Goblin Town or whatever, but it originates with Tolkien. Um, but in that world, it's just so natural, and it feels natural to use it in real speech too, because it's just I don't know, it's so evocative. But you compare that to the Orc City, and it's like it, it's speaking to you in a language that only makes sense if you are aware of Lord of the Rings and orcs and orkiness, right? It's built into it's speaking to you in the language of a genre and not of a story. Like it just assumes you have that built-in knowledge, even though his book also has like it starts. Don't ever do this if you write fantasy books. It starts with a glossary. There's like 10 pages of glossary, um, of like fantasy jargon, and it commits a lot of sins. Honestly, like there's the whole there's another writer meme of calling a horse a snippet or whatever, where like he makes up new units of time rather than just say an hour is like a third of a hand, a half a hand, or something. It doesn't even line up evenly. So it's rife with these sort of fantasy genre cliches, um, and issues. And I feel like a lot of modern writing does that. And the new wave, dare I invoke the eschaton of my own absorption.
You're submitting to our your dam has broken. You finally
Yeah.
submitted.
But one of the reasons it's so interesting is that it's trans genreing. It's deliberately not trying to be a market. That's how I have defined it when I was talking to people about it. It's people really just trying to create like a story, and the story is the story more than other art scenes I've seen, at least in the genre community, because when you're communicating with the in the basis of genre already, and also this goes back to all my complaint about Save the Cat with these predefined plot structure beats of a novel. Um, yeah, I think it actually affects the authenticity. Like Star Trek, to go back to that, there weren't other shows like that on at the time. It was literally the weird vision of him in his head, and obviously you still ultimately a story is a story, and you still come back to some basic premises. But yeah, I think it's also degraded our ability to create authentic or like secondary worlds with great verisimilitude, um, or works that do that.
Well, I mean, with for similitude, the reason. Well, let's kind of unpack why does Goblin Town work in Lord of the Rings versus Orc City, and I think because Tolkien builds up so much trust with you that you could actually say with Goblin Town. Well, I've just read Boromir, the Boromir death scene, and Tolkien just conveys it's beautiful because people hate the singing chapters because he will like convey Elvis poetry, and when Aragorn literally is holding Boromir, they literally sing that beautiful poem about their ancestors and him dying. Do you remember that scene in the book?
I don't know. I haven't read Lord of the Rings in a long time. It was The Hobbit I just read, but that also is not as bad as Lord of the Rings, but there's a lot of poetry and songs. And dude, I would skip every other one, especially the
Oh,
elf songs.
poser! Oh my God,
Yeah,
you skipped.
for reading
Oh,
out loud, I don't want to sing.
sorry, you have to. It's the whole point. It's part of the Anglo tradition. It's
I
mythic.
sang all the dwarf songs. I'm not a
Okay,
fan of Hobbit, or sorry, of elf music, to be honest.
okay, you're doing for racialist
I'm
reasons. I can
guilty
respect that.
posting right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck finding me. I'm behind 12 gates, bridges of Khazad-dûm.
You have tree monkeys. Yeah, no, I respect that. I can respect that at the very least. But the very part that he subjects you to several pages of elvish and made up poetry within the world that describes their ancestry of these people and mourning for the dead and all these intrinsic language games Tolkien does. Because he does this, when he names a town Goblin Town, it's not, oh, this is where the goblins live. Fuck it, I mean, call it Goblin Town. This is where goblins trademark live. No, 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 no. It's this, when he names it Goblin Town, he's like, well, England just means land of the Angles, right? So it's actually historically accurate. It makes sense for a group of people to name a town
Well,
after
that's the thing.
themselves.
It's not even what they named it. That's just what Bilbo calls it in his book.
Well, yeah, like
But
even that
yeah,
still makes sense. That's still normal naming conventions, even from
exactly.
foreigners.
Yeah.
Deutschland just means our land, or Germany is like the land of the Germans or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's a foreigners name it one way, the people of the interior name it the other way. It makes complete sense within context. Versus the orcishly orked all over her orc ussy guy is completely different. Is right? He's relying on you knowing the meme of the orc. He's relying on the memeplex.
Or Uruk asshole.
Or, Oracle hits different. Well, actually,
She
at least
got
in
that goblippy.
at least in Elder Scrolls lore, scat play is probably considered extremely, extremely like ancestrally important.
Yeah, yeah. That's a Malakath play.
The hymen in Elder Scrolls, the orc's hymen is not in their vagina; it's in their asshole.
Probably. Todd, can we get confirmation? I think you're listening.
But in all seriousness, when a slop rider like the dude in question, when he offshores, what he's doing is offshoring a world building to the general memeplex, to the Geist.
Mhm.
Basically, he's like, I don't have to describe you what his orc city is. You know what an orc is. You watch Lord of the Rings. You played WoW. You know what an orc is. So I can just name it Orc City, and I'll let your brain fill in the blanks in the most sloppy way possible. That's the difference here. The context in which both of these men are writing, you can trust Tolkien where he didn't just say slap in Orc City on or Orc Town. He meant it in a very sincere way within the make sense within the universe of the setting.
Yeah, and stand on its own. You could hand that book to someone 300 years ago, right? And they would pretty much get it as long as they read English, could understand modernish English, and 300 years from now, if they somehow that memory is buried and lost, that's fine. But you hand Orc City to somebody 1,000 years from now, and they'll be like, what the fuck is an orc? Like, why do I care about any of this? Yeah, it's just a different approach to. Well, I guess in the sense of authenticity, it's treating the story as an individual and unique experience.
Yeah, and Tolkien does that with his setting, and Lovecraft too. Which means Lovecraft is a vaporous figure. He's complete Proteus at this point. Like Lovecraft is just, you could throw Lovecraft in anything. We made this point several times every time we read a Lovecraft influenced story. Is that Lovecraft, both his themes, his mood, his personality, his voice, is completely ripped away from anything that's quote unquote inspired by Lovecraft. Even in settings that we like, let's say Delta Green, the tabletop RPG. A lot of ways that's still, it's true in some ways to the spirit of Lovecraft, but in other ways, it's, hey, you get to see Lovecraft characters in an X-Files setting and come play in our playground. It's character. It's the name recognition as theme park. It's, yeah, again, you take a ride in our Lord of the Rings theme park on Amazon Studios, now streaming on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the day, for the sake of communication, same thing with languages. For the sake of ease of communication, for mechanical and technical reasons, all these local dialects and the local dialects within a character setting, even dialects you don't like Jar Jar Binks, or Anakin's extremely poetic and operatic dialogue. Those are the kinks and continents of a particular dialogue and language of a medium. Lord of the
Well, and
Rings,
of a singular artist too.
yes, it's an internal language. It's an internal method and system of symbols and language that the authors. It's a private language. When you open a book, you're inviting yourself to a private world and private language. Nabokov actually gives, oddly enough, for a man who did not read genre fiction, Nabokov says something very interesting. He's like, every time you read a book, it's a made up world. He's like, when you read a French book, I don't want you to think of gay Paris or dour and depressed Russia. The Russia of Dostoevsky is completely of Dostoevsky's making. It is his inferences of the world. You have to, every time you set, even if it's a so-called real place, you still have to world build, because it's never going to be one for one the same thing that you experience with your eyes. Every student has a different experience of America. When I write a story in America, for example, when Nabokov writes a story of America, it is his personal interpretation of America, and he says basically it's basic world building advice. He's like, you have to do the work. Never ever ever take your readers' assumptions of the world for granted.
Yeah, it's the didactic instruction of the reader. That's how I would phrase that, Gabe. You're instructing the reader in how the world functions according to your own the author and or the narrator, because the author is always speaking through a narrator.
Actually, it's a new wave point. You're supposed to let a didacticism is it's in dialogue with the real world around you. No. Nabokov says let the world building wash over you. Every novel is a fantasy novel. Every novel has world building. You have to let it wash over. You have to engulf yourself in it and leave your assumptions at the door. He is being anti-didactic. Nabokov is being a new wave author, and that's in that talk of it.
In that the morals and story of the story may not actually be true. Like this might just all be nonsense.
Yeah, it might all be nonsense. Each. That's why I've described Nabokov's writing style as an immersive sim. He's an immersive sim designer in a world cell world, because each of his characters, each of his settings, even his use of language, words are a game. The reader is supposed to interact with it, get to feel of it. It's very tactile thing. It's a Rubik's cube. You're supposed to fiddle with it. And is the narrator true? Is he lying to me? Is Pale Fire, for example? I mean, the entire world is making. The whole point of Pale Fire is that literature is a form of afterlife, or is a new form of life. It's the same thing with Tolkien, for example. He creates a mythology for a world that does not exist. So for any Englishman reading about the Shire, for example, or any man reading the old the love story he wrote with his own OC, Tolkien did the basic bitch fan fiction thing. He wrote his self insert to get married to his real life wife in his real world, and he put it into his setting. It's one of the outer canon books they published recently, the Fantasy of Nuremberg, or something like that. I can't remember the name of the short story collection that his son published. But the reason why that's not cringe and it's not out of place is even if you did not know Tolkien as the author, the romance within that setting fits the world perfectly and bridges the lore and the mythos of the Middle Earth perfectly, versus the uh, elf girl boss in the damn Hobbit movies, right? With his weird, she wants to get dwarfed down. Basically, she wants to get dwarfed. You
Yeah.
know, it's a totally different thing. It's purely it's erotic. It's
Oh my
pornographic.
god. I just realized Peter Jackson made those movies. And as a
Yeah.
dwarf getting a hot chick. I
How
mean, you've seen Peter Jackson, right?
can we get a height check on Peter Jackson? Hold on, I'm typing right now. He does look like a dwarf.
Yeah, he looks
Peter
like I actually don't know if he's short or not. Is he?
Celeb heights. Let's go. 5'4". He's 5'4". Oh my god, his
Oh
wife's
my
taller than him.
god.
His wife's taller than him.
Oh, I just saw that picture too. Oh, that is brutal.
Oh my god. Say he self-inserted. Andy Serkis is taller than him. The Hobbit, Martin Freeman, the actor who played the titular Hobbit, is taller than him.
That's not true. I'm sorry, Short Kings. It's your fantasy. Your fantasy is it came across a little cringe there, Peter. Sorry.
And it's unauthentic to the universe, right? Because
Yes.
the only proper miscegenation, which is more racial upgrading, is of course Aragorn marrying the elf bitch at the
And
end.
Aragorn is, I mean, he's Numenarian, right? So he's like he's gonna live to be 600 years old still and be like, all sorts of crazy strength and super shit. Like he's borderline, it's not as big of a step down as a regular human.
And if I remember correctly, the race of man does, with his particular lineage, they have elf blood in them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's hyper hoppas. It's light a hyper hoppa miscegenation.
Yeah. All right. I think we're wandering afield. I don't want to drag it out if we don't have too much more to say on it. I was just pitching the idea to you because I feel like there's something there, but I'm still like kind of struggling to get, I don't know, to guess have a clearer definition of it all, which I think I'm a bit closer to now. And I honestly the prequel example I think is really key. Like I hadn't thought about that, but I'm kind of walking away with a clear understanding of why like those the first three and then the following the prequel three, like why it had the reaction it had while still being under Lucas's control. And then when he released control, the sort of nightmare thing that resulted, right, where they sort of skinwalkered the original trilogy, and just pretended the prequels didn't happen. Oh, that picture is brutal. Gabe just sent me the Peter Jackson wife picture.
You got to put this in the thumbnail somewhere, actually.
Yeah, I think I could do that.
But are you finally kneeling to see your own argument has led you to prequel appreciation?
Well, in a way, they're still not good, but they're very authentic with the authentic definition I'm using, in that there's a consistent. That's the thing; they're not good in collaboration, in conversation with the first three movies, because it's like these are tonally inconsistent. There's all sorts of clashes there. That's why it's always I could do it better than George Lucas. Everyone says that. But within each little trio of movies, it is consistent in a voice. It's just a shitty voice in the prequels, but it's authentic to the author. And that's sort of what I'm interested in, is like the authenticity and believability of these secondary worlds. And I guess just sharing why so some of the gaps, I don't mean to say there's not good stuff coming out anymore. And it's all, poo-poo because the internet exists, but why it feels like it's changed. And I think the genreification, the heavy genreification, reliance on tropes, and lack of like a single clear voice, all kind of loops around to the same thing. And so authenticity, it's another aspect of the slop economy.
Well, yeah, and again, it's that turning. It's the main hook. The main dichotomy is story versus setting. Even if you can get rid of the cultural anchor and still be technically good, Like, for example, let's say the Andor situation. It's a good political thriller story about revolutions and how they work and how partisan warfare works.
Mhm.
Apparently, it's actually a really good political partisan like theory cell show, but it's plopped into Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
It's completely detached from the cultural anchor at the point. You're just using the Star Wars aesthetics as a setting, as a playground for your own headcanon.
And you said earlier, like it probably would be even better if it wasn't tied to Star Wars. And I think that's a really interesting key point, but simultaneously, probably nobody would have fucking seen it. And so it's again, and that's probably related to issues completely unrelated to authenticity, but just like virality, the ability to get eyes on things. Yeah, if it wasn't Star Wars, it would probably been what was it, Carnivaled, right? It probably would have got like one
Uh,
season.
or
Everyone's like,
Firefly.
yeah, Firefly.
Firefly has a very strong cultural anchor. It's based on Joss Whedon being pro Civil War. He's pro Confederate. You know what I mean? Joss Whedon even admits it. It's based on the American Civil War. And when you look at Firefly and you look at things trying to ape Firefly, they want the sarcastic, witty out rebels without a cause. You know what I mean? And one of the things that try to ape Firefly, by admission, is of course the Outer Worlds, tying it back to the Kane Quarter.
Todd.
That
Or no,
particular,
Kate.
yeah,
Tim.
yeah, Outer Worlds will be anchored that literally drowns. It wraps around a Kane's neck and drowns him. He almost had a flawless batting average until the Outer Worlds, and that's perfect. They take they turn a cultural outfit into a cultural costume, which is the Firefly, which is a story of a post Civil War world, a veteran who still fundamentally believes in the cause despite him losing, right? And fundamentally is it yes, other being sarcastic and witty, being a rebel about a cause, generally has its flaws and generally can be an amoral asshole at sometimes and just being pure utilitarian and realpolitik. And Outer Worlds just changed it to yeah, LOL, we are space pirates, fuck capitalism, that kind of thing.
I blessedly have not touched it or even watched anything of it. So,
Yeah, what I'm saying is, you take something like that, and Firefly is a very distinct, unique setting. A Battlestar Galactica, it's Mormon fan fiction. It's the Mormon version of the deeply Catholic version of Lord of the Rings. Mormon theology is sci-fi versus Catholic theology is fantasy.
it also copy pasted Outlaw Star, an anime from an older anime, which anime actually is probably a really great case study. And I should have mentioned that earlier with authenticity anchor points and sort of like genreification death. Because I mean, you want to talk about like speaking within your own little like mini like niche genre language to like the point of being incomprehensible to anybody outside of it. Modern anime, like even everyone I know pretty much that was into it at some point now is just like, what the fuck is going on over there?
What you think anime has become slopified?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As a millennial, it's just like I don't understand it. Like the new stuff coming out, for the most part, there's still good stuff, but it's very much speaking to like a subculture of I don't know. People are into like like the little girl stuff and the women stuff. Um, I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, and I'm not super knowledgeable of like anime creators and how they get their stuff approved. I just think of like how diverse stuff used to be in the anime world, like the different series that came out, and it seems like it's gotten, from what I've seen, a lot of it doesn't seem as creative.
I mean, other than you're talking about like K-On! And stuff like that, which by the way I hear is generally good. We love our lollies here. We support our K-On! Supporters. K-On! Is a right wing show, as we all know. But I think the manga, I think the anime genre as a whole, it still has very much of a cultural anchoring. It's deeply culturally anchored. I
Well, in
mean,
Japan, yeah.
yeah, even the stuff that gets imported here. I mean, Attack on Titan is the most it's the most normie safe anime choice. Attack on Titan is still objectively a unique setting that deals with a lot of themes that no Westerner could ever possibly like wrap their head around.
Mhm.
Or same thing with Death Note. And you can see another great example of culture anchoring and missing the point is the American Death Note adaptation.
Oh yeah, that was bad. Anyway, I don't go to the whole anime thing because I genuinely don't. I have to like read up on it a bit. I've not followed anime in the last 10 years at all. Um,
Well, at least in terms of manga, I mean, in manga, the history of manga is that one dude, the author and the artists are the same person.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who did Berserk for 30 years was writing it and drawing it to the day he
Till
died.
his heart fucking exploded. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's his thing. And there's another I know did a good one. Was it Ota McGarty or whatever? Is the one about the step people, and the girl who gets married off is the first story. It has other stories. That's another one. It's like just one lady, and she has another series about like a maid or something that didn't look very interesting to me. But yeah, just like obsessive. Like that's another one that is a person with just extreme vision and taste because it's such a obscure story of this like family in modern day Turkmenistan and just like their life in 1700 AD, which is like nothing that interesting was happening historically then, but it's just a time and a place.
It's his niche fascination.
Yeah. Um,
It's tough to say. It's tough to really think about because basically we're just talking about slopification here. Something starts a really unique and centered and focused within a particular strength within a particular central point. But once you throw away that anchor to expand it, it just becomes vaporous. It's completely ethereal. It's just that's the whole point of today's episode, basically.
well, I wouldn't say it's slopification because again, I'm trying to, ironically, with the Slop Kings, I'm trying to eradicate the use of the word slop because everyone is slopping and just like everything I don't like is slop. This is slop. This is slop. This is slop. And I'm trying to create a few more vocabulary words and meme them a bit, at least just in our little circle of other ways to describe like what the fuck just happened. Like enshittification is I love that as one, where it's the corporate milking of uh, the market's trust, buyer trust. Um, then authenticity anchor points. I don't think it has to be the first thing in the series. Like we were saying with Next Gen with Star Trek, I think that probably is the more powerful anchor point for the series as a whole. And I think that's good. I think it's a very good anchor point. It's very authentic to the vision of even the previous series, to the creator, um, and I guess regardless of that, it's a very clear and concise vision with verisimilitude. It creates verisimilitude, a feeling of it in the watcher in that case.
But just I still think there's not enough of a substantive difference between slopification and acidification and what you're describing here with cultural anchor points.
It's more that whether an anchor point, the anchor point is not meant to replace that something becomes slop or you can call it slop. The idea that I'm trying to put forward the anchor point is that it's um I'm trying to merge a few ideas about control, creative control, um form of the like the medium that was used, and like make a value judgment on how how much strong creative control you can have based on the medium used, right? Like why having a book that the movie is based on matters versus just having a, a series, a TV series based as a sequel to a TV series, as a sequel to a TV series, and have it how the book has a tends to create, because of its form, a more concrete anchor point in terms of like the sense of the world. Like The Witcher, for example, is another, I guess, another one I that you could consider for this.
Or to follow because what you're describing here. Correct me if I'm wrong here. You're describing medium as a mold. The medium in which you tell your story, it fundamentally molds it the way how it's interacted with, or how it's felt and how it's perceived and how it's actually even told. If I'm correct, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So an example of this would actually, let's say, because you're saying slopification and shitification implies a negative, dysgenic point. Well, cultural anchoring or de-anchoring a story doesn't necessarily make it bad. I think a strong example, you use a video game reference, I would say, Fallout 1 and 2 versus New Vegas. New Vegas is a great RPG, but the form, it's a first-person shooter versus isometric game. With graphical fidelity, different graphic engine, different art style. New Vegas is completely cowboy western with a little bit of Art Deco, while Fallout 1 and 2 are completely urban decay, 90s grunge with a pinch of gothic Art Decos thrown into it. The very medium of being a first person shooter completely changes the context in which you experience the story being given to you.
Mhm. Yeah, it absolutely does. But it can still have a lot of the same spirit. But yeah, the medium is the message, as they say, to some extent. Um, but even then, New Vegas, I would say a lot of people consider a like equally like lore friendly, valid way to experience the Fallout world. Um, so I don't think it's necessary. I don't know. In that case, I'm not sure it's necessarily even more better or lesser, but it's just different. Yeah, I don't even know where I'm
Well,
going with that.
and actually, a good example. So let's say I were to make a story that was an adventure story that's set in like the Improvidence universe. Yeah, it even has the redhead babes and everything. Their harem, but it takes place in like the Lake Michigan era. It's about pirates, right? But it's an adventure story. And actually, let's say, for example, let's make it even an adaptation. Let's say it's a video game, right? And it's a Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but set in the a Providence universe. And there's some sprinkling of lore here and there about moralism, so forth and so forth. But it's mostly just a combat. It's very Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the pirate game, but with the skin of Providence, the lore from Providence, and some dead wind turbines in the horizon. Like that would be it could be a good game. It could even have a good story. But the cultural anchoring point, which is it's about the frontier. It's about the mythos of the frontier. It's about the mythos of the Puritan heritage. It's a mythos of the New York Yankeedom and Ichabod Crane, the old like founding, literally founding stuff, the myths and mythos and the pathos. You know, the fallen leaves and eating those weird Weetabix food. You actually used a proper name for the damn food, but I can't remember the damn like the weird wheat mix they eat. Like it's
Oh, a cornflower.
acorn flour, exactly. They eat the acorn flour and finding the skeletons of dead children. And it's all about that frontier fantasy. If I completely replace that frontier fantasy and that frontier mythos, that rooted mythos in early Yankee folkdom, and replace it with a pirate story set in Lake Michigan, it
Mhm.
would be a completely different flavor and mood and tone, despite it being good on its own points. I would say, would that be a good example of cultural de-anchoring?
Yeah, I think it would because I guess we were bashing genre earlier, but yeah, you are shifting not so even genre because it'd still be an adventure ultimately, but um, yeah, you were shifting, I guess, theme maybe your theme and like of that language of myth, like what you're saying. Yeah, there's some kind of like there's like a mythic language element to this. It's like if even with Star Trek with its like stiff corporate professionalism, like military professionalism, it speaks to like a certain like a mode of being. And I think yeah, all stories have that mode of being. And so if you wanted to do in Providence, the high seas, you could. There is a way you could do it of that incorporates some of the frontier spirit, American frontier spirit. That probably would be tied to those same themes, so it would be closer to the anchor point. um yeah, so yeah, I think that's a good example. Thank you for shilling in Providence. Please check it out, everybody.
No, I wanted to use an intimate example because this is a thought point that you created. So I thought tying that thought point and dare I say anchoring it down to something you intimately know would
Yeah,
help ground
and it's
the discussion for
nautical.
you.
It was a nautical example too, so it's
Mhm.
an anchor was thrown out.
Yeah, I drown your shitty story with my new wave pirate video game.
Just dunk on it with a giant iron with huge old-timey anchors. Yeah, and so yeah, I guess that's my ultimate pitch then. Is yeah, if something like grounds a series, right? Like you were saying, like if you made that series and if it didn't match, it would be de-anchoring, or it would be a de-anchoring point in the series in that secondary world. Just like how um Next Generation was like an even stronger anchoring point for the Star Trek universe, right? There was this first series, okay, strong anchor point. There was Next Generation. Oh wow, this shit's like really it's on the same language of myth, and it's just like even getting even clearer, growing. Um, yeah, and so I guess it's almost like I guess I'm just like really coming up with a convoluted way to describe you can rating how valid something is to the original lore and the spirit of the thing, and whether something, so it's an anchor point, and then I'm defining it if it has, based on the form, if it's in the same form as the previous versions, and how and artist input of the creator. So I guess that's really when I'm trying to use anchor point in that way to be more clear. Maybe something in our future slop conversations to be able to refer to things as good anchor points or de-anchoring, culturally de-anchoring.
Well, a good example with Deep Space Nine, if you notice, they doubled down on the anchor. With the original 3 Star Trek series, they doubled down on the diplomacy, on the politicking, on the Socratic dialogue method, versus the Amazon show of Lord of the Rings. If you wanted to make a spin-off show set in the Lord of the Rings universe, well, do what Tolkien did. Let me read some new Norse sagas that were discovered since. I'm pretty sure 1 or 2 sagas have been discovered since Tolkien's death or since his research. Let me go back to the wellspring that he developed from. Let me read some Catholic eschatology. Let me read some. Let me go back to some like Anglo myths. Let me go to King Alfred the Great. Let me go to all history and folklore and mythology. That was his wellspring. Okay, let me put that into my setting. Let me go to his. Let me read Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle. Let me see if I can get anything from there. You could put a new. Can you put a new? Yeah, you could put a new spin on something by using the same wellspring, using the same source that the creators did of the initial thing to stay true to it. You can mutate it. You can make that. Oh, well, how are donkeys made? You can have that horse fuck
Like that
a donkey
mule
to get a mule,
mules. Yeah.
right? But a mule is not its own thing. A mule it's not a zebra, right? There's no genealogy between a zebra and a donkey and a mule and a horse. Sorry, but there is a genealogy. If I have my pet horse and you have your pet mule, and my horse like eroticus predatory rapes your donkey, and you get a nice little mule,
Uh-huh.
right? There, you can still see the heritage, despite the mutation, despite the differences. You can still see the lineage within its form. And if you can you can have your new story in the setting, but you still have to have that same strands of genealogy with the source material.
I like that. I like the metaphor of of the donkey, the mule as like a output, right? A creative output. You could make mules. Disney's making mules right now out of Star Wars.
No, they're painting zebras brown and telling you it's a damn donkey.
Pretty much. But,
Actually, would you say Battlestar Galactica reboot was true? In some sense, spiritually anchored still to the OG Battlestar Galactica.
I actually don't know. I've never watched any of the Battlestar Galacticas.
Neither have I. I'm just recalling a video essay that claimed it was.
I saw a feral historian video on this that was very persuasive.
Oh, fuck you. I actually am referring to.
Yeah, I thought you might be. And you were calling me an RLM media truther or whatever.
Well, yeah, feral historian actually is based in cringe, and yours is absolutely coal and soy.
All right. We'll save our prequel debate and all that for the future. Let's pause it there. Thank you, Gabe, honestly, for like talking through it with me, because this is I'm still like mulling it. Might put like an essay out on the Substack about it, maybe with some clarified ideas, because hopefully it's not been too messy to listen to my sort of half-formed ideas, and Gabe helped me workshop it into something more cogent. But yeah, thank you for listening so far. If you have, please like and subscribe for sure. I mean, if you stuck around this long, you may as well see what else we churn out. And throw a comment in. It takes a second of your time. It really will boost us in the algo. We always appreciate that, and really, we like just chatting with people.
Yeah, if you actually want to matter, you should also subscribe to our Patreon, $5 a month, to be part of the Talmudic network of TOOKY'S Mag.
Exactly. To get real one-on-one time with Gabe. Gabe state. You have to set that up where you have to like get locked in. You have to just talk to people, do a Q&A every week or something.
Oh, Discord speed dating with Gabe.
Yeah. But yeah. Thank you for listening. Have a good night, y'all. Cast away, ye anchors.
Good night and good tucking, y'all.